Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Zimbabwe Research Network webinar. Today, we've got a very interesting topic with us today. We're talking about domestic violence in Zimbabwean partnerships. So whether be it you're married or you're not married, your boyfriend and girlfriend, or you're just interested in each other, or maybe also we're looking at situations where we've got violence between parents and kids, or guardians and children, or the ones who are being taken care of, whether you're in Zimbabwe or you're in the diaspora. But what has actually necessitated this meeting is the domestic violence in the diaspora. We're not saying that there's no violence in Zimbabwe. I think we've all grown up in the Zimbabwean communities, and we've come to a normal state where we expect violence in partnerships. But what is shocking us now is that the violence seems to have escalated, like getting to murder, right? Previously, you just say that they're fighting, they're beating each other, but now, we're just doing away with the whole family. So this is why the Zimbabwe Research Network decided to have this meeting, and we looked for professionals in this field. So I'm going to pause a bit. People are saying they have issues with sound. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
hear.
Yes, we can. Okay, so if you're having an issue with your sound, can you please raise your hand and we see if we can help you, or we go ahead? Okay, so we do not have a raised hand about the sound, right? Okay, so the Zimbabwe Research Network admin team came up with this idea to hold this meeting and to have this discussion. But this discussion is not only between the panel members, it is between the panel members as well as the registrants. But for the first part of the meeting, we're going to be having the panel members presenting from their different expertise in their different fields about what is driving gender violence or domestic violence in Zimbabwean partnerships. Then after the panel meeting is finished presenting on their own findings, we're going to open all your mics and your cameras. Then you're going to feel free to question or to pose any question or to give an opinion. Because we are all adults in this meeting, we're going to seriously ask you to please raise your hand. You use the icon on the top, which says raise with the palm, open palm, and then we're going to choose people in a chronological order. But please also note, because of a time issue, please keep your statement or your opinion or your question quite short and succinct and precise, so that it can be answered precisely. And also, please refrain from insulting each other or from fighting. But we do advise that you are very free to have differing views on the same opinion. So to start off, I'm going to ask the panel members to please introduce themselves, and I'm going to be following the order which is on the list. I'm going to start with Annah Bengesai. May you please introduce yourself?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Annah Bengesai. I am a population scientist based in South Africa at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Annah Bengesai. Next, we're going to have Dr. Eve.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Eve Chandaengerwa. I'm a socio-cultural anthropologist and social worker based at the Midlands State University. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next, we're going to have Francis.
All right, greetings everyone. My name is Dr. Francis Ziwanai. I'm a conflict resolution expert affiliated to Durban University of Technology as well as the Zimbabwe National Defence University. I love to affirm myself with being a father of peace, since I desire to see and experience peaceful communities or families with domestic violence or families which are free from domestic violence, as well as seeing maybe alternatives to violence being inculcated in communities and families. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to press a pause here. We've got 2 people who are saying that they cannot hear anything. So if you can't hear anything, may you please try to log out and then log in back again, right? So is everyone's audio okay? Okay, perfect. So after Francis, thank you, Francis, we're going to ask Patricia.
Okay, my name is, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Patricia Basiyawo-Mwedzi, a retired principal lecturer from Morgan College, researcher, now a voluntary, doing voluntary work. I'm a director, Life Hope Foundation, and my main area is gender and entrepreneurship.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Next, we're going to have Rodney.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rodney Mabika, a community development practitioner and educationist focusing on monitoring, evaluation, and youth education in Harare.
Thank you very much, Rodney. And then we're going to, last of the panel members is Samson.
Good evening, everyone. Depending on where you are. My name is Samson Mhizha. I'm with the University of Zimbabwe. I'm a developmental psychologist. My focus is on mental health, resilience, and development of children, especially those in difficult circumstances. But of late, I've been focusing on what I refer to as male vulnerability. I consider men to be vulnerable, however we look at it. And I want to be the champion.
Thank you so much, Samson. Yes, that is very interesting and it is very supported. Yes. So finally, I'm going to introduce 2 of the co-hosts, which is Edmond Sankanyando and Chandaengerwa. If you can come online and everyone see you. Maybe some are interested to know who is Edmond and who is Chandaengerwa. Yes.
Thank you,
Edmond.
Yes, I'm Edmond Sanganyado. I'm an associate professor at University of Saskatchewan in Canada. And I'm a father of 3. Today I'm here as a husband. So I'll be asking questions in the perspective of, a parent in a relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, Tatenda.
Yes, I'm Chandaengerwa. I'm a researcher at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And also, just like Edmond said, I'm here in the capacity of a mother of a son who is 1, and I'm hoping to learn a lot about raising a son who will treat women right.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. So this was the panel introduction, including the co-host. So I'm going to turn my camera off, and then I'm going to leave the floor to the panel members. So to start off, we're going to have a state of affairs on domestic violence in Zimbabwe. What is the state of domestic violence in Zimbabwe and among Zimbabweans? And we hand over to Dr. Eve.
Thank you, Dr. Brunette. You will forgive me. I am from Zimbabwe. I still want to give people Maruval. So I'll be calling you Dr. Sorin. So, and even maybe to avoid being beaten up by somebody somewhere there. Okay. So I'm going to present on the state of affairs in Zimbabwe with regards to gender-based violence. So I'm just going to start with a general definition of what gender-based violence actually is. So gender-based violence actually has been defined by lots of organizations and lots of scholars, but generally it is perceived to be any harmful acts, whether they are physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, or economic or structural forms of violence, which are perpetuated against a person's will, that is based on socially ascribed gender differences between males and females. So that's what I'm going to be taking gender-based violence to be. So gender-based violence, commonly known as GBV, remains one of the most pressing social and public and legal challenges in Zimbabwe, but not only in Zimbabwe, but globally. But recently, more recently in Zimbabwe, it has been a point of concern that there appears to be an emerging increase in cases of gender-based violence. Although the country has made progress through stronger laws, awareness campaigns, and improved support services, violence continues to affect many people, particularly women and girls. Men and boys can also be victims, as Dr. Mhizha has rightly pointed out, and as I will also rightly point out as well, but women remained the most affected. The statistics show that women are the most affected, women and girls, especially instances of femicide, but more recently, there have been also an increase in issues or gender-based violence with regards to males, and maybe even points of concern that when it comes to gender-based violence, if we are saying that men are the main perpetrators, we need to put more focus and more research on the men and on the males themselves. And maybe for this panel, it's something that maybe I noted with concern that maybe we don't have any of the perpetrators. It would have been interesting to actually maybe get some information from some of the people maybe who've maybe been rehabilitated for gender-based violence. We can get their perspective, and maybe survivors of gender-based violence. And in some of the instances, it is unfortunate that we cannot have some of the victims. I don't normally like calling people victims, but some of them are actually victims because some are actually deceased. Especially in cases when we're looking at one of the most recent cases of the woman in the United Kingdom who was killed together with her children. So for me, even if I'm still presenting on gender-based violence, issues of gender-based violence or anything to do with gender, for me, intersects with a lot of other factors, a lot of other issues. And it also affects even children, because if you look at this particular case of this particular woman from the United Kingdom, children were also killed. So this is not just about men and women. If you look at most of the definitions that we come across, they focus on men and women. But for me, maybe having a background in sociology, I'm arguing that the issue, this is not just a gender-based violence issue or a domestic violence issue. It is actually a national crisis which needs to be addressed at this moment, or it's a very urgent issue which needs to be addressed because we are creating a culture of violence and where these things are increasingly becoming accepted. And it's actually shocking when one looks at Facebook comments and statistics and how some males are commenting on Facebook. They are already shaping the culture of gender-based violence and how males in Zimbabwe will look at gender-based violence and respond to it. According to recent national statistics, about 1 in 3 women between the ages of 15 and 49 has experienced physical violence since the age of 15, while around 1 in 4 has experienced sexual violence. Much of this violence occurs within intimate relationships, making domestic violence one of the most common forms of gender-based violence in Zimbabwe. I would also want to point out when I was at the Women's University in Africa, there was a student, a female student, who was actually killed by her husband who used a fire extinguisher to beat her up because she kept on insisting that she wanted to go to school. So she died because she actually wanted to go to school. So gender-based violence takes many forms, and it's a very complex issue. It includes physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, economic, and structural abuse. It also includes child marriages, forced marriages, sexual harassment in schools, workplaces, and public spaces. And me being a sociologist, I argue that gender-based violence, which occurs in the home or in the school, is interconnected to all these other spaces, the workplace, and all other public spaces. So whatever people say in public spaces, whatever people say on social media, and whatever our children watch on the television, and whatever they read from textbooks, all that contributes to how we look at issues to do with gender-based violence and how it plays out in our society. So these experiences of gender-based violence can have serious and long-lasting effects on survivors' physical health, mental well-being, and financial stability, and sometimes can even result in disability. Several factors contribute to the high levels of GBV in Zimbabwe. There are many, and some of them we're going to be discussing them, but some include harmful gender stereotypes, unequal power relations between men and women, increasing pressure on males to provide, poverty, economic dependence, alcohol and substance abuse, and cultural practices such as child marriages. Many survivors also do not report abuse because of fear, stigma, or limited access to support services, especially in rural areas. So you can imagine how much abuse goes on in rural areas and goes unreported, whether it's males or females. And a lot of the times, like I've previously indicated, this abuse happens within the home, which is previously assumed by a lot of people, even up to today, to be a safe space for children and women. And this abuse sometimes even happens in churches, which are also perceived to be safe spaces. In response, Zimbabwe has introduced laws such as the Domestic Violence Act and implemented the National Strategy to Prevent and Address Gender-Based Violence. The government, together with civil society organizations and developmental partners, has established support centers, raised public awareness, and expanded counseling, legal aid, and medical services for survivors, including services such as the centers where at public hospitals where survivors can go and access services if they are still alive, and the victim-friendly unit at our police stations. Despite these efforts, many challenges remain. Cases are still underreported. Access to justice is still slow, and support services are not always available, particularly in remote communities. Addressing gender-based violence, therefore, requires continued commitment to prevention, stronger law enforcement, better support for survivors, and changing harmful attitudes that allow violence to continue. And I'm hoping we're going to be discussing even some of the harmful cultural practices that are there in Zimbabwe, which include even the ideology of the breadwinner, which we argue in anthropology and sociology that it is actually not African. So we need to go back to some of our African values and see what is going on in our societies, because one of my arguments is that what we call UNU or Ubuntu has actually died, or it's dying a small death. And that is one of the reasons why what is happening in our societies is happening, because Ubuntu actually has one of its core principles as the respect for humanity and the respect for human life, which people these days are no longer worried about. And even the respect or the fear of Ngozi sometimes would act as a deterrent for people to kill other people. So these are issues maybe I'm hoping we will raise as our discussion goes on. While progress has been made, sustained efforts from the government, communities, and individuals are essential. So each and every one of us has got a role to play, whether we are part of the government, whether we are part of the communities, or whether as individuals. Each individual is part of a particular social structure. They are part of a particular family. They are part of a particular school. They are part of a particular church. And if each and every one of us plays their role, I believe we'll be able to tackle this social problem that we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eve, for the great introduction to the state of affairs of GBV in Zimbabwe. So to jumpstart our discussion, we want to look first at what are the predictors, right? We are now taking that journey from the beginning of those intimate partner relationships. So what are the predictors really? What are the early warning signs when you're dating or when you're married that things can go the GBV way? So to help us understand that, we'll go to Anna to kind of explain more on why it's important to understand the predictors and what are the things that we need to look for.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Dr. Eve, I think, for giving such, an elaborate background and for touching on some of the predictors of gender-based violence. I think from the introduction that she has given, you can tell that they are multifaceted in the risks. They sit at different levels. At the individual level, they sit at the, either the partner, it could be the relationship, it could be community. But I just want to focus on one or maybe two that is well documented, and I'm going to take it from the research that I've personally done on intimate partner violence within Zimbabwe and within sub-Saharan Africa. And for me, that is control. And it so happens to be one of the triggers that we often ignore. The research shows that jealousy, for instance, is a common trigger in relationships. In the research that we have done, we found that 49% of partnered women were most likely to experience some, outbursts from their spouse if they, for instance, spoke to another man. We also found that, their whereabouts, who they speak to, is also another trigger for, just that emotional outburst. And we might think that control is mild or a milder version of abuse. But for me, based on the research that I've done, that's where everything starts. If we just watch for the actual physical, if we just watch for, the actual threats of violence, we're actually missing the link, because sometimes control sounds like love, right? It sounds like someone is concerned, but it becomes problematic if it's one-sided. Only one person gets to determine, what the other person can do. Then that becomes control, because it's no longer about the relationship, but it's now about that person, own ego. And it's not just about, maybe just wanting to know where your partner is, caring where someone is. I think in a normal relationship, if it's mutual, if it's reciprocal, that is fine. I think that is actually what all healthy relationships should strive for. But the distinction is not on your partner always asking you where you are, but it's when they ask and they are not satisfied with, the answer that you give. And also, they prevent you from maybe communicating, maybe visiting your relatives, visiting friends, and so on. So the test that we need to look for is, can the woman say no? Or even the man, if it's the man, can he say no? For instance, if, I want to go somewhere and you say no, do I have the ability to say, I will do this because this is the right thing for me to do? Can she decline to explain herself when she gets home? And can she ask him the same question without getting a pushback? And control in itself, I think, is problematic because, like I said, it's one-sided. It's not just about asking, but it's about the intention behind the asking. And secondly, it's about the attitude behind the control. Underneath this is the belief that a woman, should always, it's like a woman is being treated like a child. You don't have a voice. So whatever you do, it has to be within the confines of what someone feels is the right thing to do. So you do not have agency as a woman. And that, I think, as Dr. Evie has said, I think is centered on our beliefs, especially our Zimbabwean beliefs, that a woman deserves correction for acting against prescribed social norms, whether that correction comes verbally or that correction comes maybe through withholding certain things, or it comes through physical abuse. So if a woman falls short on certain things, like, you should have told your husband where you were going. If she falls short on that, then it means there has to be correction. And that correction is what often comes now in the form of abuse. And the other research that we also did showed that unfortunately, there is quite a large proportion of Zimbabwean women who believe that violence is appropriate in certain circumstances. So research showed us that, about over 30% of women believe violence is appropriate if a woman, for instance, burns food, if she goes without telling her husband, if she neglects children, violence is actually acceptable. And that's where it becomes problematic, because if I believe that violence is acceptable, my husband believes that violence is acceptable, what prevents that relationship from becoming, violent? I think I've exhausted my time.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Anna. We'll kind of go to Dr. Patricia to just help us unpack this. Where exactly is control different from poor communication? Really, like I'm thinking of an example of someone who can't communicate, or who's struggling to communicate their feelings or their fears, and resort to prescribing maybe dressing or actions to the wife. Where do we kind of draw the line, so to speak?
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think on controlling, it's very necessary even to teach our children the early warning signs during of domestic violence. I'm going to start on what are the early warnings signs where dating or married. Our children, we are breeding, we can also date. When they are dating, they see some of the things that they reflect some of the things that we can see that this person has gotten a behavior that can end up controlling somebody. So even as parents, even when we are dating, it is necessary to recognize warning signs of domestic violence from individuals, which includes our children at home, seeing the indicators and seeking support before abuse escalates is very necessary. While no single behavior guarantees abuse, the following predictors are associated with an increased risk. I've divided the warnings into two: dating and marriage. Dr. Anna, she talked about controlling, but it starts with excessive jealousy and possessiveness. Even our children at home, we are breeding. When we talk about domestic violence, we are not talking about only women. Gender, it means both men and women. Everybody is facing domestic violence in the home. There are men who are also suffering. So excessive jealousy from the women or from that man, it can also affect the one who is dating. It can also affect somebody. They end up controlling. Then also, I think Dr. If when she talked about controlling, there are men, even women, who controls their husbands, or even when they are dating, what to wear, where to go, and how to talk. They can even embarrass you in front of the people. These are early warning signs. Even when your child is doing that, see that this child needs something, support, so that he won't behave like this in his or her marriage. Let's go. Then pressures. Frequently criticizing humanities, or what we say belittles others. When somebody is talking, but they try to reduce you to nothing, it is a sign of that this person can end up causing domestic violence. Then also constant checks on phone, messages, and social media. There are even those who are dating. When you go to bath, they come back, they scrutinize somebody's phone and put it back. Then after this, they start asking a lot of questions. And yet there is some laws which say you must not touch somebody's phone. It's necessary to, if your child is, maybe if you have got siblings, when he or she is touching other people's phone, or even doing something which shows that he's interested in people's things, there should be some control and talking to the child so that you reprimand and even seek support from others who are doing counseling. Then also there are also some others, they make threats even at school. Even if they are when you are joking, they take the joke seriously and they start fighting for nothing. It's a sign that this person can also end up doing domestic violence. Then use of alcohol and drugs.
Because of our time, we are going to jump off to Samson. From your perspective in psychology, what is it really that drives these behaviors, this controlling behavior, this jealousy, this manipulative behaviors? What is really at the bottom of it? Is it a question of men trying to reclaim their manhood? What is really going on? Go ahead. You have 90 seconds to 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. In psychology, we know that emotions do play a very significant part, and development of emotions start during infancy. So the attachment behaviors between a child and their caregiver, that it creates a then working model. So if it is secure, the person can be secure, knowing that even when the partner is away, our relationship is secure. She will come back or he will come back. But when the attachment relationship is insecure, they will develop an insecure relationship which they can go within relationships. So there are people who are jealous, have an attachment dysfunction. So those people actually need counseling, they need support and they need therapy, but they don't know that they need it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, because you are bringing up an important aspect of attachment, that it started off probably from childhood, which means there is an important role that parents really need to play in bring up emotionally resilient individuals. So what are the patterns really or the shifts in behavior that kind of can act as an early warning sign? We know that there are sometimes that we have cases where it just happened so like randomly, she just hit me or he just hit me. Like, are there any behavioral changes that take place that can also act as a early warning? I'll start off with Anna again.
Thank you for that. So I think just picking up from where I left earlier, the patterns, I think it's actually a sequence. And often with controlling behavior, what happens is the next stage is isolation. So you find that where jealousy maybe starts with just checking in, I'm concerned, the next is restricting contact, with friends, with family, which leaves you with no one to talk to, no one to even compare, and say, okay, is this normal? What's happening in my life? Is it normal? And no one to turn to. So you find that threats of harm tend to come later, but, it starts from just, I'm concerned about you. And then now, you cannot talk to these people, restrict. And I think the second shift is in what gets said and not just what gets done. So when both, like I said, when both partners believe that violence can sometimes be justified, it becomes problematic. And I think the doc who spoke before me just, he clearly laid it out. One of the challenges that we have is that some of us, we come from families where violence was normal, right? So that's what we know. And our systems are so regulated to accept that. And we tend to repeat that cycle, right? And it might even be the fact that as a young girl, I tend to be attracted to a violent man because that is the image of a father or a father figure that I grew up with. So there is that as well.
I'll end you there, sorry, because of our time.
Okay.
So you are kind of laying out that it's a journey, really, that
Yes.
violence doesn't just start. There are some behavioral shifts that actually takes place. So I'll go to Francis. I know you were not expecting this. When you are having conversations in conflict resolution, have you identified like those conversations that, oh, this could have been kind of the shift in behavior that could have helped this couple early in their relationship?
Sorry, if you can repeat your question now.
So I was saying in your conversations with couples, have you noticed some behavioral, as they're speaking, that there is some behavioral shift that occurred that could have helped deal with the issue before it became really a domestic violence case?
All right, that's fine. In most cases, dealing with the victims of gender-based violence, they point to certain trends which manifest within our communities, which are triggers or predictors when it comes to the manifestation of gender-based violence. So most of the things, if we are to address those underlying conditions before they manifest violently, then we'll create families or communities which are very free from violence. As we say, when it comes to creating these peaceful families or families which are free from gender-based violence, we need to be proactive. Let's identify those forces. Let's look for alternatives. Let's suppose we are talking of Zimbabwe now, which is being engulfed with drug abuse or things to do with poverty. So if you are to address those things, then there will be a shift in mindset that yes, alcohol is not a driver or is not always to blame when it comes to certain behaviors, but let's try to embrace it positively because it's something that people consume. But if we consume it positively, we know how to deal with it. The status quo within the Zimbabwean communities, yes, we understand that life is tough, but does it mean that when things are tough, you are quickly to respond violently if there is any misunderstanding? So these transitions or these social economic factors which are affecting people, they've got a part to play, but it's upon us now to embrace them positively and map the way forward in trying to create these domestic violent free families and communities.
Oh, thank you so much. You bring up another important aspect of the environment, right? That when you are kind of in a hard-pressed environment, people tend to kind of lash out in different ways. And that manifests mainly even in their households, particularly with those who they are intimate partners. However, there's this aspect that you can kind of happening now that I don't know, I don't have the statistics or the numbers, but there's kind of a new reality that GBV is now higher among partners who are living abroad, where both partners are actually working, where the concerns of finances are not necessarily there. Dr. Patricia, maybe can you comment on that? Why is it this a happy couple in Zimbabwe becomes a violent couple when they get to UK?
Oh, thank you. I think I did a research some last year in the University of Zimbabwe. I did a research on gender imbalance in the tertiary, the rise of female enrollment and the behavior, the decline of fatherhood roles. Most of the people, women, are now they've higher post and they are earning a better salary than the males. The happiness now, the male will feel insecure because of the woman who is earning more. I've seen the research I've done. I've seen most people fighting in the men and the woman fighting because of the financial status. So I think it's most of the men, they've become hustlers now. They are now leaving the formal job to go and hustle so that they can get more money. I think that is the economic challenges that is happening is a very, very factor.
Oh, thank you so much. because of our time, we'll leave more time for discussion. So let's look at prevention. We looked at predictors, the patterns. Now let's look at prevention side. And how can we really stop GB4 before it happens? Are there other aspects of social norms or that can help us to reduce this risk? So we want to look at what can be done. Rodney, you have been working with communities for years. So what have you seen working among communities? Go ahead, Rodney.
Rodney, you're muted. May you please unmute?
Okay, thank you. On prevention of gender-based violence, it is something that is slow, but it is very sure in solving the problem of gender violence for good. I've come up with the 5 strategies that can be used to prevent gender-based violence and domestic violence before it escalates into harsh words or violence. The first one is about emotional control and regulation. You know, one must be in a position to control the emotions, whether you've been confronted, whether there was bad communication between the couples or in the families. It is very, very important to not confront while the emotions are still on heat. So one needs to have a very simple teachable practice, that is stepping away and returning later. Then we will solve the conflict, or we'll try to make the resolutions, the agreement, the reconciliation, while we are sober-minded. So the first thing is about able to control the emotions before it turns into the violent, then stepping away. Then we need also to build the skill from childhood. The emotional control and regulation must not start when one is an adult. The emotions must be controlled whilst one is still a child. The child must be taught on how to control the emotions. What should I do when the emotions are high? So both at schools and in communities, there must be life lessons about emotional control. Oh, well, we are at home. The father is angry. What should we do? The mother is angry. How should we solve the problem that is arising? The first one is about emotional control. Then we have got the issue of community engagement. You know, it is not only the duty of the police or the schools or the church to preach against domestic violence. It is multi-sectoral, all sectors in communities, the police, the judicial services, the traditional leaders, every aspect of the community must speak against gender and domestic violence. Reconciliation starts from the grassroots, and it is within those families that we witness and see domestic violence before the police, before other stakeholders. So the community itself must speak against gender-based violence. The families.
We'll end you there because of our time. I'm sorry. Maybe Francis, can you comment on that, on prevention, from your work? What have you found really important in preventing GBV?
All right, like what Rodney has alluded to, the main point that he is stressing is peace within families is not a given entity. It is created. Remember, we are starting from a negative scenario where gender-based violence is now endemic in our families and communities. Now we need to abate it, or we need to be proactive, creating or bringing those sources of peace. So in his presentation, or in how we intervene when it comes to gender-based violence, we must dismantle that culture, which means we can categorize it with, sources of peace within children, sources for peace between men and women, maybe focusing on those who are married, then sources of peace within the wider community. So when starting with the children now, it's upon us, maybe fathers and mothers, because it's a collective responsibility. Let's teach gender roles within our children. Let them understand that maybe boys should learn that being a man is not about controlling others, but it's about the responsibility, respect, care, emotional maturity, as well as protecting the dignity of others. So we are inculcating the culture from childhood, then going up. We can also look at gender sensitivity parenting. Parents should always avoid maybe raising boys and girls with these stereotypes, such as maybe boys do not cry or girls must always obey men. We need equality. They need to know that we are all equal partners in this journey. Then we can also take it up to maybe peace education in schools. Let's teach our children must be exposed to human rights education, prevention of violence or conflict resolution, or respect for relationships or tolerance. Then when it comes to those who are married, I want to believe the word manhood is taken maybe wrongly. In our African context, the word manhood is associated with responsibility. It's associated with providing for the family, protecting the children, maybe respect, wisdom, and leadership. So if you are to take manhood on those lines, we create a father who's responsible or who's a champion for gender-based violence, or who's there to put a full stop on abusing of children and abusing of women. So along those areas, we'll be able to prevent or being proactive when it comes to inculcating measures against gender-based violence. I once attended a conference at the University of Zimbabwe where it was focusing on the 21st century male figure and prevention of GBV. There was a poet who presented a poem titled Inga Takabvuma Wani. I want to believe that simply translates to we have accepted the responsibility. The poet was speaking on behalf of men that we have accepted that we were main perpetrators, but now we are now accepting the responsibility to be champions against gender-based violence. So it's upon us, and I want to believe I'm also part of those who are championing a gender-based violence-free communities. So it's upon us now to inculcate what is really needed in families or in communities for us to abate or to prevent the likelihood of gender-based violence. So we need to look at all those predictors which have been presented, all those sources which encourage or which triggers gender-based violence. Then we address them one by one. If it's about toxic masculinity, let's now empower or inculcate positive masculinity. If it's about social issues, let's address those. It's about stereotypes, let's address them. Gender rights, let's address those. So if you are to focus...
Thank you so much. Sorry to cut you off. I'll jump into Dr. Samson. He is going to expand on those points that you are raising. How do we empower potential victims or potential perpetrators so that they can become resilient, mentally healthy, and independent individuals? Go ahead, Dr. Samson.
Thank you very much. One of the predictors of being a perpetrator or a victim of gender-based violence is coming from a fatherless family or a father-absent family. So it would be very important to have father figures or fathers present in children's lives, because when they do not have fathers, they want to idealize fathers who are out there, even those who can abuse them. Then also need to identify children who have experienced what are referred to as ACSs, rather, which are adversarial experiences. This have a likelihood of either being perpetrators or victims of gender-based violence, and they need support in terms of counseling and therapy. Therapy and counseling helps people, potential abusers or victims, to to realize their circumstances and to reflect and behave differently, and to even identify their own emotions and behave responsibly. Also, for women who are normally we like end up being victims, it's very important to have to provide them with financial empowerment. The problem in Africa is that we have idealized and idolized marriage a lot. Sometimes it's better to be outside marriage or to divorce than to remain in an abusive and toxic marriage. But for someone who is a victim in such a marital setup, it's very difficult for them to divorce or to resolve their issues. But if they receive counseling, they can be able to do that. One issue which was raised before is the issue of gender roles. It was in the past where we socialized boys to be too strong. Apparently, this strength is vulnerability on its own. Everyone should identify and realize that they are vulnerable so that they seek support. Males don't normally seek help or engage in health-seeking behaviors or help-seeking behaviors. So they need to be to normalize such behaviors, and we need to encourage help-seeking, having safe spaces, clear education, and normalizing support. There's need for economic independence, access to resources, even having access to education, which empowers them as both as women or men. Then people also have to be aware of their rights and the extent to which a person stays in school. That means that the chances of being a perpetrator or a victim can be reduced. So education is very significant and important. It also provides people with healthy networks. It's also very important to involve men and boys in whatever we do. When I say I'm a champion for men, I'm saying they are normally the perpetrators, and sometimes they're also the victims. So they need to be engaged, they need to be involved. Because ordinarily, they live in their own cocoons. They don't seek help. They don't review whatever they're going through. And the violence these people may face is not just beating someone or killing someone. They also even die by suicide. So they need support from everyone growing up. For now, let me stop here.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to ask one question, and our panel, please, just 1 minute to address that. It's just a roundup of everything that we have talked about. So the question is, one of the observations that we have made is when a parent, I'll give an example of a mother, was in a relationship where she was abused, right, or where she was a victim of domestic violence, then we also see the same thing happening to the daughter, that she also becomes a victim of domestic violence, and also see that in the sons, they also become victims and sometimes perpetrators of domestic violence. So how do we break that cycle? So I'm going to ask everyone, just please, if you can go just 30 seconds or 1 minute, and you can answer that. We start off with Anna.
Thank you for that. I think Dr. Samson has explained it very well, that it becomes really a vicious cycle, because in fact the research has shown that children who grow up, experiencing violence either become perpetrators themselves or they become victims, because that is the reality that they know. So you find that often you sort of like you gravitate towards those kinds of people that have those behaviors. But like we said, this thing, it's a pattern. It's not like someone just becomes a victim. They've got certain characteristics. So you get attracted to those characteristics that become violent in future. So I think it becomes a pattern. It's psychological, and it's within attachment theory, I think, as the doc has said, and and often, it becomes just that kind of a vicious cycle. In fact, with everything in life, often we are not really living new lives. We are just repeating what those who have gone before us have done. So maybe let me end there.
Yes, we'll go over to Dr. Patricia.
Okay, thank you. I think the best way is awareness. If people talk about domestic violence to people, to other people who have faced domestic violence, it's better because they will learn from others, from counselors and others who have also were victims, but they changed their lives. It's better. Encouragement of professional support is very necessary. Taking those children to professional so that they can get counseling is the best way to go.
Oh, thank you so much. Dr. Eve, maybe can you tap in from your past experience in demography that how have you seen these trends manifesting? Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm actually a social anthropologist.
Oh, sorry,
I'm not a demographer.
It was Patricia
Can
who
you
was
come
supposed to
again?
answer that one. I wanted to ask on breaking the cycle on domestic violence in families.
Okay, in families, for me, like I indicated when I did the introductory part, there are many factors which result in violence or end up displaying as violence in families. But like I said, families are connected to all other social structures. We cannot look at families in isolation. People don't just live in families alone. They go to work, some of the people in our families have gone to prison, have been in prison. And sometimes our prisons are not functioning well. They actually come out of prison worse than when they went in. So we need to look at the social structures in our society to see whether each social structure is actually performing the role it is supposed to be performing. If in sociology, they talk about primary socialization and secondary socialization. So all those socialization scenarios in the family, in the school, in the church, in the prisons, the message needs to be the same. Because now the problem is a lot of students encounter gender studies at university level for the first time. They never hear about these things in the community. So as Rodney, is it Rodney?
Yes,
Rodney. The community development expert mentioned, these things need to be addressed at community level, starting with dialogue, where we have people discussing these issues openly, because there's a culture of silence in our communities, because women are told you are supposed to keep quiet about marital problems. People stigmatize a woman who talks about her marital problems. We've got a lot of people with mental health issues who don't come out because of the stigma associated with actually talking about your marital problems, which include violence. So there are things like usafukure hapwa. So there's a lot of cultural things we need to address at the family level, at the school level, at the church level. The message needs to be the same. So we need to have the same message in all social institutions.
Okay, thank you so much. Rodney, what has worked really in addressing these issues as alluded to by Dr. Eve?
Okay. I think it's about community education that has worked. That the communities from both ends, the schools, when it's in rural areas, the village heads, in every meeting, in social gathering, let's preach about things that are free from domestic and gender-based violence. And that is the only...
Sorry, okay. We are racing against the time. So Francis, can you jump in on dialogues? We know that extended family can play a role being triggers or even like catalyst of domestic violence. How, like in conflict resolutions, how is this extended family aspect addressed?
All right. Normally, we talk of collective responsibility when it comes to gender-based violence. Then the wing, when it comes to extended families now, it becomes a catch-22 scenario on actually how they perceive peaceful or coexistence between or across the family. So in the event that the culture of peace is not inculcated in them, it will be a challenge for them to abate, but actually they will extend it. But now what I want to point out, maybe the issue of community and society. We used to say, or we actually have to say, a child is raised by the whole community. Gender-based violence actually happens while we can actually diagnose that this person or this child or this lady is being subjected to GBV. So it's upon us as a community to identify and address it, because we've got the right or the mandate to do so, which goes the same as to schools. Teachers or any educator, they can diagnose gender-based violence victims. So it's also upon them. They've got that mandate to address or to report to the responsible authorities. So it has to do with the culture. Those with the right to stop it, they have to. Those with the right to remind those who are supposed to act, they are supposed to do their mandate correctly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go to Samson. Like parenting, it seems like it's becoming a big issue here on going back to the root. How can we train parents now so that they can raise those kind of kids that we are going to be champions, like you mentioned, men's champions, women's champion?
To start with, the issue of parenting is not an easy job. And ordinarily in Africa, we just have kids without investing on how we are going to parent them. We just bear them. Many of them. What happens later is how someone sells business. So it's actually very important that we become so focused, so that we know what we want our children to think, to believe in, and the behavior patterns we want from them. So, and we are seeing men committing these murders in the UK because they were born and raised in Zimbabwe, not think that they will end up in the UK, where the gender patterns are different, where a woman has all their rights. Even, when I was born and bred in a rural area, when I first came to the city, I was surprised to see men walking on foot while some women driving. When the rural area, we didn't have such thing. But now people have to do raw. They have to get prepared for the new world. The world we were born in is different. So we have to prepare and parent children who are gender responsive and who can function in any world, in any continent, in any country.
Well, thank you so much for that. I have learned two new words, D-roll and gender sensitive. Those are some big words that we have been learning today. I'm going to hand over to Tatenda to kind of coordinate. Is your voice back?
I think I sound okay. I don't know. I'm still a bit nasally, but I think you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. So we can go to the question and answers here.
Sure. Before we open up to the audience, I want to thank our guests and presenters and for this wonderful panel discussion that we've had. And thank you, Dr. Ed, for coordinating. We had so much to unpack in a small space of time, and you did it very well. So I commend you for that. I wanted to also add on by, I think we left out an important component of this discussion, which is related to the digital media side of things, where we have the manosphere rising. As of last year, the UN Women had a report on the manosphere, and I had just brought this out where they were explaining how these spaces are taking advantages of the insecurities of people, and they're circulating messages that are very dismissive of women and girls in positions. And we also have social media people in our country who are perpetuating this language that is very derogatory towards women, and it's becoming widely acceptable. But we never talk about how dangerous it is as far as the issues that we're seeing now, because we are basically following messages that say women don't have agency, right? Girls don't have agency, and they need
men have agency over them. And that's a very, very dangerous premise. We need to also take account for that and how that this has been normalized. Recently, I think it's a couple of days ago, that Andrew Tate was arrested in the US, where he had thought it was a sanctuary for him. He had escaped Europe, but now he's been arrested. He had been sleeping with girls who are as young as 15 years old and making them his prostitutes and grooming them. And he has a wide following. So we don't talk about what our kids seeing on the internet, because it's a very easily accessible, these people are easily accessible to your homes, to your children, right? To our children. And then they are also grooming people to be like them because they have a huge internet following. Anyone who wants to have a huge internet following, you have to say things that are polarizing, things that are derogatory to get a following. So I also wanted to add this on to say we need to also take heed of the messages that we're getting. We haven't even touched the discussion of how our religious sectors come into play. We haven't really discussed how our leaders in these settings also may end up perpetuating some languages or some philosophies or some theories that lead to women losing agency and these things happening. And so, like someone mentioned in here, this needs to be a 2-hour discussion. It needed to be more because we needed more people. And I think this is a good start of the conversation to start from the academic level. We have people who are well vexed on it's like basically preaching to the choir. We have a bunch of knowledgeable people talking to knowledgeable people. We really also need to be engaging more with the communities, and we can discuss how we can further go about this. But I think this is a very, very good start. So I wanted to add this on. I know we can keep going on and on, but thank you for allowing me to speak on this.
Thank you so much. Brunette, are you here?
Yes, I am. I dropped out a little bit, so thank you,
Okay.
everyone. So, Prof, have we finished with the panel, and now we can open the discussion to everyone who's attending?
Yes, we can
Okay.
open the. Yes.
So I think already Dr. Tatinde has already opened with an interesting take on people like Shadaya and Andrew Tate and how this also affects domestic violence. I also wanted to point out that it was mentioned, I think it was alluded to, that maybe this social media aspect, maybe the environment and the social media aspect, and how we have come to normalize everything. And to say, if this guy did it, I can also do it. You know, it's like we now have proof that it is possible to beat your wife or kill your whole family if they've wronged you. Or we now have evidence of people coming online and going like, if your wife does this, you're allowed to kill her. If your partner does this, you're allowed to beat them up. It's quite interesting and it's quite disturbing at the same time as well. But I think it was Dr. Anna who actually said from her own research, but despite the research, you just need to go on social media and then you also see that we've got so many women who actually support domestic violence. Like if a woman says, my husband beat me up because I was late coming from a party, then they go like, yeah, but it must not be late. Your husband was correct, right? So I think we've had this discussion before where we say also women are the gatekeepers of patriarchy or the gatekeepers of domestic violence. Right? In as much as we're saying that women are the biggest victims of domestic violence, we're also the biggest gatekeepers of it. We think that it is normal to have this in our cultures or in our system. So I'll stop here, but I think we've opened all the mics and the cameras for the attendants. If I can have one person from the attendees to come online just to show that your mic is on. And then after that, if you have a question to ask, please raise your hand. So automatically, I'm going to start with Dr. Faith Zengeni. May you please unmute and then have a question to ask and make it short and precise so that the panel members can also answer you directly and not make it very broad. So thank you. Raise your hand if you're interested in asking a question or in contributing an opinion or in providing constructive criticism.
Thank you very much for organizing this webinar. My question is to Dr. Mhizha. I wanted to find out from you, Doc, what can be done to support men and women in the diaspora so that we don't see any cases of domestic violence as shocking as the recent case that we witnessed. And we've seen some of these discussions on social media where men are, complaining, women are also complaining. But ultimately, what can be done to support men and women in the diaspora so that we don't see such violent cases? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, am I responding now or later?
You can respond now.
Okay, thanks, that's very important. But maybe to start with, I lament the issue that we do not do sufficient research. So we do not know much about what is happening and what drives some of these people, one. But secondly, it's also very important that the officials involved in the travels and the community there has to be support services. Like you say, Brunei, that women are the gatekeepers. Sometimes there are signals that things can go bad any moment, but people ignore them. And men ordinarily, especially in the diaspora, divorce actually is easy, unlike here. And there's a lot of loneliness there. People are too busy but lonely. That there's a lot of social isolation, which is very risky for mental health. So people should be receiving real-time mental health services, real-time legal support services, so that they can get out of such very unfortunate circumstances. I thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Samson. So I've got one interesting question from an attendant or from someone who is registered. So this is open to everyone, including the panel members and also to the attendants. So the person asked, what lessons can be drawn from our forebearers who used to discipline their wives, but that was never considered as domestic violence? So I think, to put it in simpler terms, like previously in the old days, men were allowed to discipline their wives, but this was not called domestic violence. So why are you calling it domestic violence now when a woman is disciplined by a husband?
Okay, can I attempt to answer that one?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think the honest answer is that it was violence. That's the short and long of it. It was just not named such. And I think, because the concept of domestic violence is a relatively new concept, in the sense that, it wasn't spoken about during that time. But the short and long answer is that it indeed was violence. What has changed is not the act, right? But the understanding that we have of its cost. Because then even our mothers, even our grandmothers were very supportive of it. Society, everyone, it was the norm. It was just not called violence. But I think the most useful lesson that we can learn from this era is that the mechanism it reveals, the naming, the tolerance, the silence. Because when you speak to those women who went through that, it's not like they enjoyed it. They just did not have a voice. They just did not have a way of expressing it. But it's not that they enjoyed it. So silence does not necessarily mean that violence was not there. It just didn't have a name as we have it, or it was named something else. But it really was
Dr.
violence.
Very briefly, I would want evidence that it happened and it was sanctioned. What is there in terms of shared knowledge that parents could discipline children, just like in the biblical times, but not a husband disciplining a wife? We may need evidence for that. Unfortunately, we don't have written evidence for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so following up on this point as well, there's a question of whether this discussion is balanced or not balanced, because it seems to be arguing against domestic violence, or maybe we need more input from people who might be seeing things in a different manner, right? So if we think you are saying things in a different manner, please feel free to contribute as people are raising their hands and to contribute, and also to contribute your opinion. I'm sure that people have got different opinions, and I'll stick to mine, you stick to yours, and then you can come together and listen, and maybe agree or agree to disagree, right? So thank you, Dr. Samson. So the next person to ask a question or to give us an opinion is Angela Munjanga.
Okay, thank you. I'll just try to be very quick. On the first one, I wrote a comment in the comment section.
Sorry, Angela, may you please speak louder? We can't really hear you.
Okay, so I was saying that I wrote a comment in the comment section in the chat platform, but let me just encourage. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you can hear you. It's still a little bit shaky, but we can hear you. If you can try to come closer to the mic and speak louder.
Okay, let me try to just remove the head.
I was using the headphones to hear, so let me remove them. So I was
saying
it's
better now.
For the first part, it's to do with the diaspora. My thinking from a post that was shared on Facebook some time back about a man who traveled to the UK on a spouse visa. So you know how this modern day diaspora is mostly made up of the women who are going to Europe first on the COS as care workers and stuff. And then we have got the husbands following. So in between the time that this man doesn't have a job, he's just arrived in the West up until the time they get a job. So most likely they are stay-at-home husbands, but they are not empowered to. It's an issue of empowerment as well for the boy child, for the men to really acknowledge household chores as work that can be done by either a man or a woman. The moment one gets married, they ascribe those chores for the woman. So this guy is not doing any work at home. The wife comes back from a 14-hour shift and everything is haphazard at the home. This guy didn't go to work, didn't do anything, and is expecting the wife to come from a 14-hour shift to cook for him, to be the wife and everything. So he's on social media, live streaming, showing people on Facebook the house, it's not cleaned and the plates are not washed and whatever. So that could be another issue, that because our men are coming from Zimbabwe with a mindset that this is what the woman is supposed to do, this is not what the woman is supposed to do. Then when they go into an area where the woman is now the one who is going out there doing the work and is staying at home, he still expects the woman to come back, does not consider the tiredness and everything, and expects the woman to behave like our mothers who were stay or at home wives. So that could be, in case of the diaspora, it could also be one of the reasons we're having issues, because now the moment the woman does not satisfy those roles, and because she's genuinely tired, ask her why she's not doing this, and she tries to explain, it becomes an issue of, oh, now because you're the one who's earning, you're the one who's doing this, so now you're disrespecting me, and things like that. And then the second one I wanted to say about the issue of, do we have evidence? Like Dr. Samson was asking, do we have evidence? I come from a literature angle. I'm not an anthropologist. I come from literature, and we have got literature. We have got novels from Zimbabwe. We have got novels. Take for instance a novel like Uncertainty of Hope, where a woman is battered, abused by the husband in the home. She tries to go to her mother to tell her that this is what is happening. Gary is beating me up and is doing this. And the mother tells the daughter, this is normal. Men do that. You should stay for your children. You should. So we might not, I do not have maybe an autobiography that probably might say this, that I can think of it. But we have got this documented in literature of how women are battered and abused, and their mothers tell their daughters to, suck it up because their fathers were also doing it. And it's normal. Men do that. Men discipline their wives, and it's there in literary works. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if I can see the hands that some hands are up. I don't know if Douglas Network so you want to come online. We are open to discussion from everyone, and I think we're being very professional and we can have constructive criticism. If Douglas Network, you want to come online and maybe air some of the views that you might have about the whole aspect of whether domestic violence is mostly against women or mostly against men, or it's just in a broad thing in general, and maybe just a different point of view, and then we can have a discussion on that. Douglas Nato, would you like to come online? Hello? If you can unmute your mic. Okay.
Or we can have
Dr. Nyamukachi.
Yes.
Dr. Nyamukachi.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you so much. I'm so much pleased to meet Dr. Chandaengerwa and Dr. Basiyawo here. Actually, my contribution is based on the need to have a proper curriculum in our schools so that maybe our people, as they grow up, they learn some of these things. You know, behavior is learned. So maybe the violent ones did not learn. So there's need for us to train them, to teach them as they grow. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Douglas, if you can come online, or if not, Dr. Samson, can you comment? I know that you a champion of men's vulnerability. So how do you see men as being vulnerable in domestic violence?
Or men actually vulnerable, but the problem is that they are not available to report. I remember I once told a police officer who said there were even cases where when a man reports, the whole police, all the police officers, they would laugh at that man. But before even they go, they ask them whether they are strong enough to report whatever they're facing. Growing up, each community had some women known by everyone that they were being abused by their wives, but they did nothing about that. Those things do happen. So, but what is important is to inculcate feelings of agency. Like Dr. Tatinda said, to growing up children, so that they, whenever they feel that this is beyond what they can tolerate or accept, they move out of such a relationship. But clinging on, which actually even reinforces some men to abuse or even murder their partners, is because they don't want to lose that person. Even when that person is abusive, they don't want to lose that person. But beyond culture, Brunette, we don't do research. Just climate change on its own is causing violence. There's a research that shows that a 1% increase, a 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature leads to an increase between 1.7% likelihood of violence. That's why we see most wars, civil wars, are in hot temperature or during hot season. One. Secondly, in Zimbabwe right now, go to most of these urban areas, the sewage, the air quality, the pollution, those things can create annoyance in people that they become actually vulnerable to committing crimes. Then we talk of drought. And it itself, studies have shown that after every failed harvest, the likelihood of violence is high. Unfortunately, we are not doing research in this part of this world. Even
the pandemic,
when we are teaching, we're teaching from what has been done elsewhere, not from what we are doing as a people. And we are not, most of you are in Europe. People can manipulate the temperature in houses. We can even manipulate the temperature in our buildings, in our communities. But we are not aware of that. We are not alive to all those things. We are just surviving as a people, teaching from textbooks that were written elsewhere. Anyway, let me stop.
Okay, yes. So thank you. So I think Dr. Samson has said that there are so many other factors as well that contribute, and also we have a serious case. I think this is quite a serious case that we've got domestic violence against men, and unfortunately, the society does not support men reporting on domestic violence. I think this is what Dr. Samson is saying, right? Because either you're ridiculed at the police station or you're ridiculed by your peers. So men become vulnerable because if they are victims of domestic violence, they then are forced to keep it within to themselves so that they cannot, they don't become a laughing stock, right, from the community, right? So I know that
Sorry, I need
Yes.
to emphasize something here. And I think this is coming from the Dr. Nyatwa, Douglas Kwatizo, where we seem like, and there's that, and I would like someone on the panel to speak on it and make sure that we don't seem like people who are bashing men and want to make it seem like men are evil or whatever it is that it may turn out to be, because I feel like every time these discussions are had, it will always be flipped into a situation where it turns out to say we want to attack men and we are making it one-sided, etc. The emphasis that needs to be made is that, yes, domestic violence is a self-reported issue, or it comes out when someone dies or someone is hurt. And predominantly, the victims turn out to be women. We are not the ones who are saying this. This is what the stats say, that the issue is that the people who die the most are women when it comes to intimate partner violence. And I don't know what to do with that because that's what the evidence is, right? Number two, when it comes to the self-reporting thing, men underreport. That is true, but women also underreport. So if we're going to talk about underreporting, it's an underreported issue. And if you have one demographic coming out at the top, counting the underreporting as well, it means that they are the bigger victims of that situation. We don't want to make it start, going against stats and the statistics and what it says, that there are more women who suffer violence at the hands of men, right, than men who do. But this is not to say that men don't experience violence from their women, that men don't die at the hands of women. That is not true. We also have to really acknowledge that. So I wanted to make that clear.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe
Can I
just
comment?
to add on to that as well, Tatenda. I did a systematic review of research on gender-based violence over, the past decade. And the research shows that, there hasn't been much that has been done on men. Most of what has been reported is on women. And even if you look at, like national statistics as well, we have more statistics on women. So it's not really an issue of us being biased, but it's simply reporting what the data says. And we acknowledge that men, they do indeed face, and we have them, we have our brothers in our families, and we have seen that happening. But we are talking about what the statistics say. We are talking about what is normative. Right?
Okay.
Not to say that men are not experiencing violence as well.
Okay, so thank you. So at the moment, I'm not going to give the mic to the panel members. I'm going to go straight to the attendees because they also need a chance to comment. So I'm going to ask the attendees to make either your comment or question short and straight. So the first one is Noresma Parura. Can you unmute your mic, Nores?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, how are you guys?
Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to make a contribution first. I don't have a question. I wanted to talk about the issue that was raised by Dr. Samson when he mentioned the issue of the Bible regarding to people being disciplined. I just wanted to make a quick note on that and say, when the Bible says the two get married, right? They said the two become one and the two are equal. So there's no need for one then to feel like they are in position to be disciplining the other. If we are equals, we are treating each other as equals. Who is beating you when you are beating her? So if the two of you are not beating each other, then that has to stay that way. There is need for respect, mutual respect of the two parties. There's also a question that was raised about abuse being documented. Someone mentioned that she was coming from a literature background. I'm also coming from a literature background. There's a novel called The Purple Violet of Oshantu. A woman was being abused. The community knew. And when she wanted something, the community was telling her, not the husband, the community was telling her that if you want your husband to allow you to visit your people, you need to look good. You don't need to show stress. You don't need to show that you are being beaten. You need to eat well. This is coming from someone who is being beaten. This is coming from someone who's being cheated on. But instead of the society telling the husband to act better, they are telling the woman that you need to smile more. You need to eat more. You need to look healthy. She is not being protected. She is rather becoming more of a victim in this case. Smile more. Treat your husband well so that he will allow you to visit your relatives. You will not be allowed to visit your relatives if you look frail. So in being beaten, she needs actually to eat more. She also needs to smile more. She also needs to act better, regardless of the stress that's coming up to her. I'm going to be quick. And there's also the issue that came from Dr. Anna, I think, when I think Dr. Samson mentioned that why is it that this is now being called domestic violence? The issue is, I think, when these things were happening, we didn't have names for them. We could see them, but we didn't name them. There is a new term that is being used today, the word narcissist. We have always had people who behaved like that, but we didn't know how to call them or how to name them. So we would see someone acting in a certain way and we would be wondering, why is this person acting like that? How do we define this person? Now we have a word for them. We say this person is a narcissist. So this goes back to say domestic violence was there, but there was no name for it. Others called it disciplining. Others called it maybe family management. But now we look at it and say, no, this is not disciplining when you're beating your wife. This is domestic violence. You don't need to be disciplining your wife. You are an equal. So to round up, I would want to say the issue comes to the issue of like changing the discourse. The discourse already that we grew up in as a patriarchal society was telling us that men are on top of women. Even as young boys, when we were playing, we would be told that if you are pushed by a girl and you fall down and you cry, you go running to your sister or to your mother or any other adult. They would tell you that you are a boy. You cannot be made to cry by a girl. So already this is planting a seed that says, whenever you feel threatened by a woman, you need to instill violence. You need to push back. So this whole issue now then comes from how our discourse was when we were growing up, how our society was as a patriarchal society, how it was. So now we come back to what we are facing now. That is the reason why now the men would say, not even to think of the fact that we are now in the diaspora. My wife is also working. I'm also working. Maybe we need to help each other on chores. Now that man is being stuck in that patriarchal culture, in that discourse that we grew up in, that no, a man does not sweep the house. It's the duty of the lady or of the girl. So this could be why we are facing problems. Also, if you want to look at it from how we were raised, this issue was like most mothers were not working. The men were working. Most women were not working. So their duty was to raise children. We still have it in other cultures, but I will not delve into that, but I'll say this was the situation when we were growing up. Women were not working, women were taking care of the house and stuff. So it was easy for her to then be able to clean the house, cook food and everything, so that when the man comes back from work at 6 p.m., food is ready, the house is clean, the children are bathed. But now the woman is also coming home at 10 p.m. The husband is also coming home at 10 p.m. So the cooking, the taking care of the children, the taking care of the house now becomes the problem. So this is where we will probably go back to our discourse. Thank you so much for this time.
Okay, thank you, Norris. It was quite in-depth and quite informative. So I'm going to go through the attendance before we answer. And please keep it short. We're running out of time. Thank you. Ashley Tome, unmute your mic and please say what you want to say in 1 or 2 sentences.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to ask, I have heard many insightful contributions from the colleagues and insightful presentations from the panelists. I liked what Dr. Nyamukachi said when he talked about introducing issues to do with teaching about the dangers of domestic violence in the curriculum. But then how do we disseminate this information to the mainstream society? How can we educate the members of the mainstream society on the dangers associated with perpetuating domestic violence? Maybe if someone maybe can answer this question for me.
I think, okay, we'll keep this question and then we'll come back to it. So next, if you can go to Matilda, can you unmute? Matilda Sinkende. Unmute, please. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My contribution first is about the new trend of people who are coming into the country and as repatriates, we have started to experience more domestic violence than ever before. So we should, as researchers, look at that. Why are they doing so much domestic violence and how can we assist the community? And I also want to contribute that what we need to do with the communities is about bringing awareness all the time, continuous bringing awareness to communities, to traditional leaders, to church leaders and all other people who may be affected, so that we fight this menace together as a country or as a people of Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Matilda. And next we go to Zinoreva Tendai. Please unmute.
Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I just wanted to respond to the question, how do we explain modern day economically independent women staying in GBV homes when they can lead meaningful lives alone? I think what makes most women right now stay in violent relationships is because we are experiencing a new phenomenon called societal violence against single women. If you go on social media, there is so much violence against single women. Shadaya is at it every day, bashing single women. Women are at it every day, bashing fellow single women. So people are afraid of leaving these homes because they also want to be accepted by society. They also don't want to suffer the bashing that they see constantly happening every day. So before we even go on to talk about domestic violence, particularly against women, we may also need to address women on women violence that is happening, particularly on social media platforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zinoreva Tendai. That is a very interesting aspect that we should also look at. So next, I'm going to ask Webster to unmute your mic. Webster. Okay. I can't seem to find Webster. So Charles Maivise, may please unmute your mic, Charles.
Thank you so much for this very, very great discussion. Quite beneficial. I would not want to be lengthy, but I would also want to acknowledge the complexity of the discussion itself, which left me struggling to really follow it fully and acknowledge whether we are actually capturing all the angles of it. I have picked the fact that there's more violence reported from women than from men, and it is still acknowledged that there's also violence occurring in the reverse direction. Maybe my point of clarification that I might need to ask is to say, looking at our societies, the way we're raised naturally, in a home setting where there's a mother and a father, just like a community where there's a chief and a whatever, there's supposed to be some kind of hierarchy of authority so that there's some leadership. Otherwise, if we have got two people who have got exactly the same authority, and I'm using the word authority, when it comes to things like making decisions, and there's nobody who seems to be in authority and can exercise a power of veto, I believe we would understand the movement might not be as smooth as we want it, because here and there there's bound to be some deadlock which are supposed to be unlocked harmoniously, though not with violence, by someone who has got that authority. And if there comes an understanding that we are all equal, the way I've had it, all equal, and people tend to take that from another angle, is it what we are trying to say, or rather, does the authority of men in a family setting as the overall leader still holds in today's society? Let me put it in that way, in summary. And of course, I don't condone violence. When things do not seem to work, harmoniously, violence is not the resolution. But I understand some of these causes of the violence, the so-called violence, would emanate from that aspect whereby now we are totally all the same, and we are, in Shona I would say, and things may not work in that way. So where do we put the natural authority, final authority of men that is dictated in the Bible and in our natural societies? So we discuss, we agree harmoniously and democratically, and we move. In the event that we tend to have different views, at least we have to settle on one. And under normal circumstances, one has to compromise. And in the event that there are risks at the end, quite often, because the men will still be held accountable for all disasters in the house, it may not be the best thing probably to fall onto a decision that they actually can foresee that we are going to get into a ditch. And when we get there, it is a man who is pointed at as the cause, even if it has been a decision of the woman. So I'm trying to find out there, where do we put then the authority of men, which probably women should kind of like acknowledge, though not embracing the violent aspect of it as a way of enforcement? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Charles. It's a very, I like how you bring across the point. You sound very academic and very politically correct. And I appreciate how you put across your point.
I actually wanted to laugh. That's actually very interesting what he's saying.
Yes, it's very interesting. So I thank you so much, Charles. I think if it has been mentioned earlier about the war control aspect, but I like how you bring this, and maybe it's a discussion for another day. And I don't know if my senior admins would allow me to say maybe the next panel that we're going to have to make is a Rohora panel. Like, what is the function of Rohora? What is the meaning of Rohora? And how does this translate to gender roles within a marital setting? So maybe you might be having a lobola panel, a lobola panel of the purpose of paying lobola. What is paying lobola, right? When the woman comes in, is she below the man? Is she equal to the
I
men?
think
Why do the men think they're above, or maybe why do the men think they're equal? But this is open to my senior admins. And unfortunately, we cannot discuss your whole point now, Charles, because we're running out of time. But I thank you so much for bringing this out, because it might lead to the next interesting debate or discussion on this channel.
And we can keep it academic as well. If people don't mind, we always have to make sure that we are in an academic space. And even when we're talking about the religious setting and stuff like that, we always like to keep it at the academic level. We also have theologians, how do you call them? Theologians, yes, in our
I think
network.
so.
Yes. We also have people who study anthropology. We also have people who's from all various aspects of social science and the humanities who can contribute to such a discussion. I think what you have raised, and I don't want you to feel like I don't think I'm equipped to respond to that, because I cannot speak on what people do in their homes as far as the dynamics of relationships. And I don't think they're a monolith. I think that there are various ways of running a household, and in some aspects, what you brought up is a thing in a household, and those are things that need to be discussed. Is it okay if we table that and take it on as a future panel discussion?
I support it, Charles. Is it okay if you join us for the next panel discussion on this?
That would be great if you slot it at a point that could be convenient for me. That's fine. Do the scheduling, and then I'll see if I can fit into the schedule.
We'll put you in the panel.
Thank you. We'll put you in the panel. So please contact me or contact Dr. Tachenta on WhatsApp in the inbox, if it's possible, if you've got our numbers, or send to Zimre's email.
Let me put it in the chat.
It's there on the WhatsApp platform, right?
Yes. Okay, so the next person to ask a question is Webster. You had dropped. May please make your question fast and precise. Unmute, please. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I just got interested in what Charles just said. I think the other element is how we perceive thing, or how we respond. The element of equality. Say when you go to the rural areas, one of the things that you do is you don't present it as equality, but say, for example, using the Bible. It's the Bible tells us that men should love their wives, and the wives should respect their husbands. If you look at those things, they're just the same as the element of equality. If you love your wife, you don't have to beat your wife. And if you respect your husband, you don't have to do things that will lead to GBV per se. So I think the other element is the semantics, or how we present the cases to different societies. And my other point was the element that probably when we are getting into these things in terms of strategies, I think one of the other critical things that we need to do is to engage men in discussing domestic violence and GBV, because if we leave them out, and if we don't have deep rooted discussions, we won't get to where we intend to get in convincing them, in identifying social cultural norms that are there. So my point here is we need to seriously engage with men, having some dialogues with men, so that we will be at par in discussing domestic violence issues.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Webster. I think this is why we really push to also have men on this platform. But I also acknowledge that there's a platform called Machinta on Facebook, which is doing some work that most men in Zimbabwe actually like. So, and it's also talking about domestic violence, etc. I haven't really participated in it or really watched it a lot, but most men think it is quite helpful with them. So that's in case there's anyone who's interested to have something discussed by men for men. There's a platform called Machinta on Facebook, maybe it can be helpful to you. I'm not suggesting it like I know it's good. I've not watched it before, but people say they prefer it. So, okay, thank you. So next we go to Ian Joel. I think, Ian, may you please unmute your mic? Joel?
Thank you, Brunette. Dr. Tatenda, greetings, colleagues. I'm based in South Africa, and my background is more on data analytics. So I liked when Dr. Tatenda was talking about what the numbers actually say. And it's really important that, when you try to address a problem, that you address the core of the issue. You can always address what we call the outliers or the peripheral matters, the things that are outside of your 95% confidence intervals. But you want to deal with the main causative issues. And it's interesting because I just pulled up a report that was done by Stats SA, and you know that South Africa has quite a bit of an issue with GBV. It's actually part of, I think it's the top 3 of the president's priorities amongst, economic growth, crime, and GBV. You'll find it right up there. But what was interesting to note is that Stats SA looked at this more holistically and looking at women vulnerability from a statistical and economic standpoint. It's interesting to note that their 2016 report, though it's a bit dated, has some relevant issues that are there. And the first one is that over 36.5% of Black African women were unemployed at that time, compared with other groups, not only across the different colors in terms of races, but also in comparison to the men, that the group of Black African women were the most unemployed in the country. And then when they assessed within that subgroup, they saw that the age generally between 15 and 34 has a 45.4% rate of women who are not either employed or in education or training. So that group has a 45.4% of people who are not in school or in some kind of training and or employment. And that kind of expresses the level of vulnerability that women find themselves in. So being a victim is not just ndazorogwa. Being a victim is a whole holistic view of the individual in terms of them being empowered with education, being empowered with opportunities, being empowered with employment. Now, if you look at those statistics, they then consolidate that and say that 41.7% of women remain more disadvantaged than their males. And in that, when they drill down to the violence aspects, they put out a stat that shows that 1 in every 5, so that's 21%, of women who are partnered with a partner have experienced physical violence. And of that, 8% of them have experienced physical violence in the past 12 months. Right. And in that group, they then looked at those who are either divorced or separated, and they found out that the divorced or separated group, more than 40% of them had experienced physical violence in the past. 40%. and this to me was just like really, really, really shocking. And they break it down into the various provinces and so forth. So when we are comparing the prevalence of an issue, it's important that we understand what the numbers are actually saying. And the truth of the matter is that invariably, most definitely, by any statistical measure, probability of predicting phenomena, whether you use the regression models, whatever it is. The reality is it is us men who are the ones who have a higher probability of committing gender violence. And I think having settled that matter, it then becomes imperative. I'm not saying we should ignore the outliers where men are also abused, but the reality is the vulnerability that society has placed women under. And as long as we perpetuate that vulnerability of not empowering the girl child, of not empowering the woman, of not calling things out as they are, and what it's saying is quite simply that us men are the ones who are beating up our women. If 1 in 5 are likely to be beaten up, according to the South African statistic, it is a pandemic. It's not just a societal misnomer. It's an actual pandemic. And femicide on this side of the planet is a very, very high occurrence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ian. So I'm going to take Dr. Eve as the last contributor or question. I think Ian is still up, but before Dr. Eve comes, I just want to respond to Dr. Ian and say that indeed you mentioned about empowering the girl child, but I think one of the attendants actually said that the issue is that we focused so much on empowering the girl child that we haven't put effort in training the young guys on how to handle an empowered woman. So when a guy meets an empowered woman, they automatically think it's a sign of disrespect, right? You should automatically respect. And if you don't automatically respect me, even if you're empowered, you deserve this. So I think this is what the attendant was trying to say. So maybe in as much as we are trying to empower women, right? Maybe we should also teach or maybe try to empower men to know that empowered women are your equals. They are not there to challenge you. Even if they challenge you, it's not like they're challenging your ego or your personality or whatever. They're allowed to ask for accountability without you feeling like they're challenging authority. But then this whole authority question also, I don't really support the whole authority question personally. I want to be very open. I don't really believe in this authority, men having authority over women or women. But this is a discussion for another day. That's why we said that we're going to have a low-baller discussion. Today, I'm just here as a moderator and not as a contributor. So next, we are going to ask Dr. Eve to maybe one last question or one last point, and then we can round up everything. It has been an interesting discussion, 2 hours in right now. I think we can even get to 10 p.m. because I can see people are still joining into the discussion. But hey, we need to eat. Our Saturday is getting cold. So Dr. Eve.
Okay, thank you, Doc Brunette. Mine is a bit of a worry. Whenever we're talking about the African culture, we assume all African cultures have the same culture. And yet, as the previous speaker has shown, if you look at countries like South Africa, where maybe the part of the Zulu culture actually expects men to be violent, Zulu men and Ndebele men, for example, are very different from Shona men. Shona culture is very different from Zulu culture. So I think we need to look at our African cultures differently and not just generalize and assume all African cultures are the same. That's one. Then secondly, I wanted to ask to also look at what our original Shona culture was like. There are some positive things we can draw on from our Shona culture, because if you look at the Shona culture, it actually gave reverence to women. Amai in the Shona culture is actually a very important figure. Tete, or even the word, the linguistic analysis of the word Tate Guru is from Teteva Kuru. So this whole idea of assuming that issues of equality are from the Western world is actually from people who have not really gone back into history. We need to really read our history. I'm an anthropologist, so this is part of what we looked at in anthropology, that Shona men were hunters and women were gatherers. These were partners. They had different gender roles, but if the men delayed in coming back home, the woman could also hunt with the child on their back. So if you go back to rock paintings, you will find the Shona woman was not a domesticated woman. So it goes back to issues of the economy and even distortions of lobola that you're talking about. Originally, lobola was 5 mice. 5 mice before money came into our African continent. That was enough to marry a woman. So part of the problem comes from the fact that if somebody from the diaspora has paid 20,000 US dollars, they will assume that woman is their property. So there is no way you can tell that man, I want to divorce you. You will be killed. So I think we really need to go back and really look at what the African culture was all about in the beginning, what the Shona culture was all about, who the Shona man is, what is attractive about the Shona man today. How can we go back to culture and leverage and say, for example, if parental responsibility was a communal responsibility, men would not be so stressed if they share parenting with their brothers, with their sisters, because Babakazi was supposed to have manly responsibilities if the brother died. So we really need to go back to our culture and leverage on the positive aspects, not just to teach our children in primary school that hari inochengeterwa mukaka inonzi chakati. We need to look at the positive aspects of our culture and also teach our children those positive things about our culture.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Eve. I think we are now landing into the whole Lobola issue, and this is a topic for the next discussion, actually, because I think it's very fire. And also to round up, we are mostly looking not only at Shona men, but we're looking at Zimbabwean men in general at the moment, and then we are going to extrapolate probably to maybe African men. And like you said, not all African cultures are the same, because some are patriarchal, like what we have currently in Zimbabwe, but some are matriarchal. I think in West Africa, we've got matriarchal society. So when we say that our African culture says this, and that, we, like Dr. Eve said, don't say African culture. You should refer to your own culture, because African cultures are diverse. But anyway, thank you so much for coming today. It has been interesting. It has been long. We did not manage to exhaust all points or aspects, all questions or opinions. But I think this is very probable, because this is a very emotive discussion and we are not going to agree on everything. But thankfully, we respected each other enough and did not trade barbs. And I'm very grateful to the panel members and also to the team and to the attendants. And I'll leave this last minute to my co-host, Dr. Tatenda. She's got the last word before we round up today. So Dr. Tatenda.
Thank you. I again want to thank our panelists for being here. You've been here for a long time. You're very dedicated. And Brunette pulled this off in a few days, gathering the speakers. A round of applause to Brunette for putting this together. It was a short notice. Our speakers came in very dedicated, very professional, and they didn't tell you that we reached out to them very last minute, but we felt like this is an important discussion to have. I think it's one of the few of its kind that our country really needs. And I want to iterate that when we have these discussions, these are very sensitive topics, and I want to commend everyone in the audience for keeping it professional, for keeping it, as we say, kosher, I guess. And we still have more to discuss. I feel like a lot of people have a lot to say. What I really want to focus on is the fact that, given that a lot of the people are very academic in this situation, and because this is Zimbabwe Research Network, the people who do this work have been doing this for years. The people who work on data have been digging in the data that was collected on people, thousands of people. The demographic and health service data that Dr. Anna was talking about had 32,000 people in it, which is nationally representative of Zimbabwe and of Zimbabweans, right? They took women aside, they took men aside, they even did HIV tests. They did a lot of things on them. Very rich data set that is nationally representative. Nothing that came out of the mouths of the people here were their own opinions. As far as their research is concerned, all they talked about is what the data was saying. This was not a man-bashing session. We were not going to discuss about women at the expense of men. We've had 3 men on the panel and 3 women on the panel. One of our panelists even said, I'm an advocate for men, and that they want men to be empowered as far as certain aspects are concerned. They want us to hear men more. There was more research. I am personally going to be supervising a PhD student who is working on research that focuses on men. So we don't want to be painted as people who hate men, people who bash men, people who don't want men to succeed, people who are against our societal values and our traditional values. I just wanted to close out on that so that when we come back next time, we don't come back, or when people leave, they feel that this was a man bashing session or this was etc. Because in the comments, I can see that it's leading to some of these feelings. And I know that sometimes the discourse online can make it seem that way, but we're not having such a discourse. This is not Twitter. This is actually people who have spent years and years and years and years and years of their lives researching such topics. And we want to emphasize that they're people who talk about facts rather than opinion. And we can just have such a discussion on opinions in another time, but not right now. So that's what I wanted to close with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Tatenda. I don't know if Professor Edmond, you've got something to add on before we round up.
Oh, nothing, just thanks to the audience and thanks to our panelists for the excellent opportunity to have a lively discussion on this important topic. Thanks again, Brunette, for the wonderful work done to bring everyone together. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. So thank you so much and see you next time. We are going to, this session has been recorded. It will be shared on the Zimbabwe Research Network YouTube channel. So if you want, you can already go to the Zimbabwe Research Network YouTube channel and subscribe. And once it is uploaded, you'll be notified. If you want, you can also wait for the update in the Zimbabwe Research Network groups. We are going to send the link of this recorded session in the group. So if you're not a member of the Zimbabwe Research Network and you'd like to become a member, Dr. Tatenda has shared the email address in the chat, and you can send your interest to your email address, or we can share a link for group number 4. No?
Yes, you can share.
Okay, so I'm going to share a link for joining our group number 4, right? Please, this is only for research and academic purposes. If you join the Zimbabwe Research Network groups, this is not the group to advertise your side hustle or selling your clothes. We know that we've got side hustles. I had a side hustle when I was in Zimbabwe, right? But this is not that group. But we are very open to emotive discussions in this group. So if you feel like you have a very strong point and you want to come and ruffle some feathers, right? Come into the group, come with your point, ruffle some feathers, instigate a discussion, and then we can have this discussion in the group, which can happen over the whole week if you want. We've got energy for this. But for today, we end here, unfortunately. So thank you, everyone, and see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.